and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode of the Jazz Update, it's about the biography and best hits of jazz composer Irving Berlin. He was born on May 11, 1888. In 1907, he made his first hit, Mary from sunny Italy. A few years later, he did it again with his song Alexander's Ragtime Band. This song went on to become an international sensation. Over the next 5 decades, his fame as a composer grew. He composed everything from ballads to dance music to novelty tunes and love songs. Here's a few hits from his repertoire. How Deep is the Ocean, Blue Skies, White Christmas, Always, Anything You Can Do, There's No Business Like Show Business, and more. He was also an iconic composer for Broadway and Hollywood. He wrote 17 pieces for Broadway. Here's some Hollywood films that he composed scores for: The Jazz Singer in 1927, Home Alone in 1991, Titanic 1997, The Green Mile 1999, Spider-Man 3 2007, and Downtown Abbey 2011. He was awarded a Tony Award for his work in 1963 and an Academy Award for Best Song of the Year for White Christmas in 1942. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's show, it's all about the life and times and best compositions of jazz composer Irving Berlin. And on this hour, we're going to be talking about his biography. Irving Berlin was one of the greatest songwriters in American history. Many of his works made it into the Great American Songbook, a compilation of some of the best classics in music. He went on to receive numerous awards, Tony Awards, a Grammy Award, and an Academy Award for his works. He was born in Russia and migrated to the US at the age of 5. His first song was called Mary from sunny Italy and was published in 1907. He was famous for his inability to read sheet music. He mainly composed by ear. His composition spanned the hundreds, made him famous before he reached his 30s. His works included 1,500 songs, included musical themes for 20 Broadway shows and 15 Hollywood films. He was nominated for an Academy Award 8 times. Some of his best-known works include Alexander's Ragtime Band, Blue Skies, Easter Parade, Puttin' on the Ritz, Cheek to Cheek, White Christmas, Happy Holiday, and There's No Business Like Show Business. His classics were recorded and re-recorded several times by notable singers and have topped the charts time and time again. Composer George Gershwin called him the greatest songwriter that has ever lived. Composer Jerome Kern concluded that Irving Berlin has no place in American music. He is American music. Irving Berlin was born on May 11, 1888 in Russia. He was one of 8 children. His family migrated to the States in 1893. He was one of the many immigrants who migrated to the States in the 18s to escape discrimination and poverty at the turn of the 19th century. Other similar composers included Gershwin, the Warner Brothers, and Al Jolson. At age 13, Irving Berlin became a newspaper seller in the Bowery in New York City. His first exposure to music was while selling newspapers. He would listen to the music emanating from the saloons and restaurants that lined the streets. He left school at age 13 to pursue music full-time, began singing for a living with local bands in downtown New York City. He would sing popular ballads for a living. He learned that well-known tunes expressing simple sentiments were the most popular among his audiences at the time. Also, in his free hours, he taught himself to play the piano. His first composition was called Mary from sunny Italy. It was published in 1907. His style was based on simplistic melodies. He would often change the rhythms of well-known classics to fit his unique style. In 1908, his talent was noticed by the Harry von Tilzer Music Publishing Company, and they recruited Berlin. He soon started growing in fame as a composer. He would add lyrics to the works of other great instrumentalists. By 1910, he was in high demand and was getting invitations to write for Broadway. His journey as a composer happened quite by chance. He once submitted a lyric to a publisher who thought it would be complete with music. Not wanting to lose a sale, Berlin added melody to the lyrics. The song was accepted and published. That began his career as a composer and a lyricist. In 1910, he wrote his first major composition, Alexander's Ragtime Band, which established him as one of Tin Pan Alley's leading composers. In 1911, singer Emma Karras introduced his song to the world. The song went on to top the charts repeatedly. Notable performances of it over the years were by Louis Armstrong, Bing Crosby, Ray Charles, and Bessie Smith. Berlin himself said the reason for the success of his song was in the melody and the lyrics, and the jaunty rhythm that defined dance music at the time. Many of his songs were crafted based on his personal experiences. For example, the song When I Lost You, a tribute to his wife Dorothy, who died in 1912. The song was an immediate success and sold more than 1 million copies. Over the next few years, he wrote more love songs, for example, the song I Love Piano. In the early 20s, he'd written hundreds of songs, mainly dance-themed music, for novel dance types that were emerging at the time, like the foxtrot, the grizzly bear, and the chicken walk. A famous song from this time, written for a musical series called The Ziegfeld Follies, was the song A Pretty Girl Is Like a Melody. Historian Alex Wilder says the song was remarkable for its style and sophistication. So now let's talk about some of his most famous compositions. Blue Skies, written in 1926, a song that talked about his feelings about being married for the first time. It was first performed by singer Al Johnson in a film called The Jazz Singer the same year. It went on to top the charts. Partin' on the Ritz, another classic, was released in 1928. This song was first performed by Fred Astaire, who performed it for the 1946 film Blue Skies. I've Got My Love to Keep Me Warm was released in 1937. It had 4 top 12 chart-topping versions, including by singers Leigh Brown and Billie Holiday. God Bless America was originally written in 1917 to celebrate the end of World War I, but only published 20 years later. In the 30s, he went on to compose for Broadway. Some of his hit theme songs from those movies include Heatwave, Harlem on My Mind, Easter Parade, and more. He also composed numerous wartime songs, from God Bless America, a patriotic song during World War I, and This Is the Army in World War II. His songs were used several times in TV shows and films in the years to come. Another famous classic of his was written for a musical called Annie Get Your Gun in 1946, a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical where Berlin composed most of the songs. The show ran for over 1,000 performances and became his most successful box office hit. Also, one of the theme songs from that TV series, There's No Business Like Show Business, went on to become a much-loved classic. His 1942 hit, White Christmas, is one of the most recorded songs in history. It was written for a film called Holiday in 1942. It was first performed by Bing Crosby and stayed on the number 1 position on the pop and R&B charts for 10 weeks. Also, it sold more than 1 million copies since its release. It's a beautiful Christmas song that talks about themes like nostalgia and longing. It went on to win Berlin an Academy Award and was performed by several artists from Frank Sinatra to Joe Stafford. Berlin's style was based on an ability to speak to the heart of his audiences through the lyrics. His songs were simple and yet profound. He was awarded a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 1968. He died in 1989. Composer George Gershwin called him the greatest songwriter that has ever lived. In Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva, on this week's episode, it's about the life and times and best hits of jazz icon Irving Berlin. And now it's time to talk about some promo news. Saxophonist Jerome Saba is out with a new album. It's called Heart, and it's his debut album release on the Analog Tone Factory label. The album's going up for grabs on CD and vinyl on August 30th. So Jerome Saba is a tenor saxophonist who's been writing and producing for over 2 decades. On this album, he collaborates with drummer Al Foster and bassist Joe Martin. So the music on Heart is a compilation of originals and jazz classics. The opening track is an Ellington favorite, Prelude to a Kiss, a soft melody blended with cymbal music. Similarly themed melodies, the tracks Gone with the Wind, When Lights Are Low, and Body and Soul. ESP and Heart are covers of Wayne Shorter classics. They are reproduced as soulful waltzers in this album. Lead the Way and Right the First Time showcase the improvisational skills of the band members. For more information, please visit www.jeromesaba.com. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of Irving Berlin's best compositions of all time. Stay tuned. Blue Skies was composed in 1926. This song saw its debut performance in a movie called The Jazz Singer. It found a lot of popularity, especially among bebop and modern jazz musicians. Berlin composed White Christmas in 1942. It was first performed by Bing Crosby and went on to become an international bestseller. Always was a love song that Berlin wrote for his wife for their wedding. Alexander's Ragtime Band is one of the most famous songs in popular music and Irving Berlin's debut song that made his career. The song was publicly performed for the very first time by singer Emma Karras at a festival in Chicago. Other entertainers picked up the song and it went on to sell more than 2 million copies the year of its release. So that was a quick recap of what we're going to be talking about on this hour, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We'll be right back after some music. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's show, it's all about the life and times and best hits of jazz composer Irving Berlin. And on this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his greatest compositions to date. Blue Skies was composed in 1926. It made its debut in a Rodgers and Hart musical called Betsy. So the story goes that the lead singer in the musical, Belle Baker, didn't like the song that she was supposed to sing. So she contacted Irving Berlin and asked him for a song instead. Blue Skies was the result of that incident. Betsy the musical only ran for 39 performances, and yet Blue Sky took on wings. The first night, audiences were calling for encores of the song. The same year, the song saw its debut performance in the movie The Jazz Singer. It went on to be starred in several other movies in the years to come. A notable performance of this song came in 1946 when Benny Goodman and his orchestra performed it. It found a lot of popularity, especially among bebop and modern jazz musicians. Berlin composed White Christmas in 1942. It was first performed by Bing Crosby and went on to become an international bestseller. There have been over 500 recorded versions of this song by numerous artists, from Ella Fitzgerald to Diana Krall to Gwen Stefani to Michael Bublé. Always was a love song that Berlin wrote based on personal experiences in 1925. He once fell in love with a girl called Eileen McKay, despite her father's objections. Her father sent her away to Europe to get away from Berlin's infatuation, but love won the day, and they ended up getting married. Berlin wrote this song to her for their wedding celebration. Alexander's Ragtime Band is one of the most famous songs in popular music and Irving Berlin's debut song that made his career. Berlin was once heard saying, "The melody came to me right out of the air. I wrote the whole thing in 18 minutes, surrounded on all sides by roaring pianos and roaring vaudeville actors." He originally wrote the song for a friend of his, Reinhold Wolf, who recounted it for a magazine article. Ironically, when Berlin first wrote the melody, he wasn't overly impressed with it. He played it a few times and nearly discarded it. In fact, he almost didn't complete the song but for a chance trip to Palm Beach, Florida. While he was waiting for his train, just to pass the time, he sat down at his piano and completed the song. The song was publicly performed for the first time by singer Emma Karras at a festival in Chicago. Other entertainers picked up the song and it went on to sell more than 2 million copies the year of its release. So that was some of Irving Berlin's best compositions of all time. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. We'll be right back after some music. Here's Irving Berlin with Oh How I Hate to Get Up in the Morning. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about the life and times and best hits of jazz composer Irving Berlin. And now it's time to talk about some trending festival news. The Jersey City Jazz Festival is underway. It's one of the largest festivals in the state. It kicked off Wednesday, May 29th. It's going on until Sunday, June 2nd. So the festival is hosted by Riverview Jazz and it's taking place over various venues across the city. It's a massive festival combining food and music festivities, and the festival is great for jazz fans of all ages. The festival commenced at 6 p.m. on Wednesday with an opening party followed by a jam session. The lineup for Thursday included the Jerry Weldon Quartet, the Hot String Alliance, and the Tim Burney Quartet performing a dazzling array of jazz favorites. Also performances by Jerome Jennings, Nick Masters, the Jonathan Blake Trio, and the Nobuki Takamen Trio. Saturday, it's performances by the Riverview Jazz All-Stars, the Dave Kikoski Trio, and more. Also, a special performance by the United Children's Music Project Ensemble. Also, some food festivities and more jam sessions. On Sunday's lineup is the George Coleman Quartet, the Curtis Brothers, and more. The festival wraps up with an exuberant after-party. For more information, please visit www.riverviewjazz.org. So that was some trending festival news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Irving Berlin's best compositions of all time. Stay tuned.